Hi, everyone. I'm Soon-Young Yoon, my title with the International Alliance of Women, but also I'm the founder and co-director of the Cities for CEDAW History and Futures Project. We have lots of people coming into the room who they don't know each other. You don't know each other. Put your name in the chat. That would be great. Identify yourself so we can see where you are, who you are. And we have a special interest this session, even if you've been a veteran of Cities for CEDAW, let's hear what you think about feminist leadership in that context. Do you have one word that would describe feminist leadership to you and how it carries you through? We would love to see that in the chat and to be able to. Mary Richards from Madison, Wisconsin. So nice to see you. Louisa from Nigeria. Where in Nigeria? Let us know. Where in Nigeria? Catherine Klein. Feminist leadership. It gives me hope. Thank you very much. Feminist leadership is so much about hope. Georgetown, Guyana, thanks for joining us. We love to have Guyana with us. And we have, Sanja from Germany. Berlin is with us, the National Council of German Women's Organization. How wonderful to have you. Feminist leadership is the key to advancement of our human rights, for sure. Lady T, equitable, thank you for that word. And we're still coming in, so please continue to introduce yourselves. We don't want to leave anyone behind, so we want to give everyone a chance to tune in, and then we will start. So my job is to talk about what we're going to do today. We're going to explore in our presentations and also in discussion groups how CEDAW and the feminist models of leadership can push back against the backlash, a lot of backs, on women's rights. And we'll try to discover some strategies to localize CEDAW that builds what we can only call resilient resistance movements in communities. And these address the crises of inequality, climate change, culture of violence, and other things that you care about in your local communities. It's always great for us to meet, but let's try to see who's actually in the room. So we set up two polls. One of them is to ask, who are you? Who do you represent? And the other one is, what is your priority issue? So let's start that. If you can get ready to do a little bit of voting. I'm actually going to vote myself. Who is in the room? I am from an NGO. I work at the UN. I'm a government official, if you are. Or I'm just an individual interested in this topic. That's fine. That's often an answer we get from young people. So I am submitting my vote. Rachel, who is helping us work this, is going to tell us when she wants to show the results. Wow, okay, here they are. From an NGO, 63%, not at the UN, but government officials are with us. We welcome you as well. And then 31% are individuals just interested in the topic. Great. I hope that you're actually new people as well. Let's pull up our second poll. What is your priority issue? Climate justice, not just climate change, but climate justice. Poverty issues, and violence against women. And if you don't see your priority issue here, please put it in the chat. So I'm going to do my vote and submit it. And Rachel, whenever you're ready, you can show us the result. Climate justice, 20%. So important. Poverty, 15%. Violence against women, 65%. And then, of course, that underlies everything else. Violence against women underlies health and inequities, which was one answer as well. It underlies the climate justice issue and the older women's issue, girls and women of all ages. Health, so important in talking about violence against women. So thank you for that. Thank you also for youth engagement, equal rights and equal responsibilities. We'll hopefully talk about all that. So I would like to pass the moderating on to someone who's been so important in this campaign, Jessica Pierson, the co-director of the Cities for CEDAW History and Futures Project. So Jessica, over to you.
Thank you, Soon Young. And it's so great to see so many people on this call and familiar faces and hear and learn all about your work. We'll now turn to learning about CEDAW, which the reason we're here, the dragon we're trying to train, right? The Convention on the Elimination of All Forms of Discrimination Against Women. And I'd now like to introduce Mary Hansel, co-founder of CEDAW Rising, who will give us an overview of the core principles of this women's rights treaty. Over to you, Mary.
Unmute. Hi, can everyone hear me?
Yes.
Great. My name is Mary Hansel, and I am an international human rights attorney and co-founder of CEDAW Rising. When we were serving as co-chairs for the Cities for CEDAW Advisory Board, my co-founder, Parisa Ijadi Magsudi, and I decided to start CEDAW Rising in 2025 to reimagine and advance intersectional gender justice at the local level through a CEDAW lens. I'm going to start by providing some background on both CEDAW for the uninitiated and local CEDAW implementation. I'll then move on to cover the 6 key attributes of CEDAW measures that make them perhaps uniquely capable of fostering structural transformation. Next, I'll summarize the step-by-step process of local CEDAW implementation. And lastly, I'll discuss some of CEDAW Rising's resources and advocacy that can support advocates, local officials, and other stakeholders in this process. So, first slide, yep, it's up. What is CEDAW and what does it cover? So CEDAW is a core international human rights treaty and the principal legal instrument for ensuring gender-based rights across the globe. The rights enshrined in the treaty promote gender justice in every area of life. That's civil, political, economic, social, and cultural. These rights apply through an intersectional lens, recognizing a broader range of intersecting identities, broader, in fact, than the range of protected characteristics under U.S. law. CEDAW recognizes discrimination that intersects with race, ethnicity, socioeconomic status, disability, migration status, and other marginalized identities. In addition to setting forth substantive rights, CEDAW delineates the mandate of an oversight body called the Committee on the Elimination of Discrimination Against Women, which is just referred to as the CEDAW Committee. And the CEDAW Committee issues authoritative interpretations of the treaty, focused recommendations to governments following periodic reviews, and quasi-judicial decisions on complaints alleging treaty violations. In fact, my first introduction to CEDAW was litigating a case against Ecuador before the CEDAW Committee. These interpretive statements, targeted recommendations, and case decisions give detailed meaning to the text of the treaty. They also ensure the treaty's provisions remain dynamic, keeping pace with evolving gender discourses. So if you look at the text of the treaty, which was drafted nearly 50 years ago, it'll seem anachronistic. But it's the guidance from the CEDAW committee that keeps its substance not only relevant, but invaluable. CEDAW has been ratified by nearly every country in the world, as many of you probably know, except for 6. And these are Iran, Sudan, Somalia, Palau, Tonga, and of course, the United States. Although President Carter signed CEDAW in 1980, the Senate has never approved the treaty by a two-thirds vote, which is what the Constitution requires for ratification. In response to the U.S.'s failure to ratify the treaty, gender justice advocates have focused on passing local measures that embody the key principles of CEDAW while addressing salient issues facing individual jurisdictions. Since 1998, dozens of local governments across the U.S. have passed measures implementing the treaty, and a grassroots movement has coalesced around the adoption of these measures. In fact, to date, more than 70 cities and counties across the U.S., from Los Angeles to Miami, Pittsburgh to Toledo, Washington, D.C. to Honolulu, San Diego to our newest CEDAW jurisdiction as of last week, Montgomery County, Maryland, which is my hometown, have already enacted CEDAW measures. Currently, more than 100 local jurisdictions are working on their own CEDAW measures. Quick sidebar, even if the U.S. had ratified CEDAW, local implementation would still be essential. And there are 2 reasons for that. First, when the U.S. ratifies human rights treaties, it does so with what are called reservations, understandings, and declarations, known as RUDs. And these typically render whatever human rights treaty it is non-self-executing. In practical terms, this means that unless Congress passes implementing legislation after ratification, which it rarely does, the treaty has little domestic effect. Second, and more broadly, even in countries that have ratified CEDAW without these types of RUDs, implementation often remains confined to the level of national government. Yet international human rights law makes clear that treaty obligations apply at all levels of government. Thus, every country needs local CEDAW implementation. In fact, CEDAW cities outside the US that have ratified the treaty include Taipei, Taiwan, Cardiff, Wales, and Nigeria is starting to implement in cities across the country, which Jessica can tell you more about. Indeed, cities are not peripheral actors. They are human rights duty bearers. Next slide, please. So against this backdrop, I now want to turn to the 6 key attributes of CEDAW ordinances that CEDAW Rising works to promote and uplift, and that I think makes CEDAW measures particularly impactful. These attributes include the following. 1, they are affirmative. CEDAW calls upon all agencies and departments to take proactive steps to respect, protect, and fulfill gender-based rights. It's not enough to refrain from discrimination. Local governments must protect rights from infringement by third parties, whether that third party be a corporate employer or an abusive spouse, and create the conditions necessary for enjoyment of those rights. Secondly, they are intersectional. Note that until only a few years ago, most local CEDAW legislation was not explicitly intersectional. CEDAW Rising seeks to ensure that all CEDAW measures are explicitly and broadly intersectional, and that all CEDAW implementation, including data collection and analysis, is through an intersectional lens. Third, speaking of data, CEDAW implementation relies on gender disaggregated data and analysis to identify intersectional inequities, measure progress, and guide evidence-based decision-making. Fourth, these measures are structural and pervasive. So CEDAW cuts across silos to address systemic issues. They emphasize impact over purpose and pervade all departments and functions. The human rights term for this is gender mainstreaming. Gender mainstreaming is so much more than the add women and stir approach, as they say. It embeds gender consideration in all facets of local governments, permeating all departments and all local government roles as employer, operator, and service provider. Fifth, these measures are responsive to community priorities, meaning there's no one size fits all. So while we're here to provide a training, if you will, there's no formula for this, and it always has to be tethered with local concerns, local demographics, and local priorities. CEDAW frameworks ensure that local actions reflect the lived realities of residents, especially underserved communities. And lastly, accountability. CEDAW requires transparent oversight through an independent body that monitors implementation, tracks outcomes, and ensures government follow-through. Next slide, please. So, local CEDAW implementation typically unfolds as a multi-stage process that is highly nuanced and shaped by the particular politics and culture of each jurisdiction. With this caveat in mind, here are the broad strokes of this process. Step 1, it often begins with education and coalition building. Advocates, community leaders, and researchers learn about CEDAW measures and begin building the local coalition needed to move the work forward. It helps to involve organizations with CEDAW expertise and a nationwide network. Also, in many jurisdictions, advocates have identified a champion within municipal government. This can be a council member, supervisor, mayor, or senior official willing to sponsor and advance the legislation. Step 2, the next stage is legislation development and adoption. Advocates and government partners draft a local measure, either a resolution or an ordinance. Resolutions typically affirm the jurisdiction's commitment to CEDAW and gender justice, but are non-binding. Ordinances are legally binding and establish core implementation architecture, including the creation of an oversight body, the process for gender data collection and analysis, the development of multi-year gender action plans, and dedicated funding. In recent years, the trend has been to adopt ordinances, not resolutions. However, sometimes resolutions can be stepping stones to ordinances, which is the intent behind Montgomery County's recent resolution. Step 3. Once adopted, the focus shifts to implementation, which is where the transformative potential of local CEDAW truly emerges. My new favorite term is pinkwashing, which is the use of gender justice measures to distract from and obscure the lack of meaningful action. So we don't want CEDAW measures to be used as a political tool without action, without implementation. So to implement these measures, jurisdictions establish an oversight body, often a commission or a task force, to monitor implementation and ensure accountability. And they arrange for a baseline intersectional gender analysis of government operations. This is often conducted by an outside consultant. And that analysis examines budget, workforce, procurement, policies, and service delivery to identify structural barriers to gender equity. In my opinion, although it's not often done, it needs to include data on the resident population to assess impacts and whether the local government is fulfilling their gender-based duties. It's fulfilling the gender-based rights of their residents. And the scope of the data collection and analysis is a common battleground in this work. Ideally, this phase also includes training and technical assistance across departments to embed gender equity into policies and protocols. I need coffee. Step 4, using that baseline, jurisdictions then develop a citywide or countywide action plan, along with department-level action plans. And these address identified disparities and integrate equity into regular planning, budgeting, and decision-making. Finally, local CEDAW implementation becomes an ongoing, iterative process of monitoring, reporting, and continuous improvement. Oversight bodies track progress, and the jurisdiction hopefully continues to refine its approach over time. Throughout all of these steps, it's critical to engage community stakeholders And doing so creates what we like to call a collaborative governance model. Um, as you can see, local CEDAW implementation is not simply a legislative act, and it's not a mere anti-discrimination law. It is a human rights-based governance framework, one with the potential to cultivate a culture of gender justice embedded in departmental processes and protocols. Next slide, please. So with my remaining time, I thought I would touch on a few of CEDAW Rising's resources to support advocates, policymakers, and other stakeholders. The first of these is that we host national strategic convenings. These are gatherings of online. These are gatherings of advocates, policymakers, and other stakeholders to align strategy, share best practices, and strengthen CEDAW implementation. We generally hold these in June of December each year, although we have ad hoc ones. We just had one in conjunction with CSW um, on Tuesday, right? What day is it? No, sorry, it was on Wednesday, and it was such an incredible convening and really productive. So please get in touch if you're not already on our contact list for these. Next, we are finalizing our model local ordinance. This is going to be an updated, customizable model ordinance for jurisdictions to use. The model ordinance better incorporates the substance of CEDAW and the guidance provided by the UN CEDAW Committee. It also builds on existing CEDAW ordinances by providing actionable guidance in several new focal areas, including migrant justice, the care economy and family support, Indigenous rights, racial justice, and environmental and climate justice. These focal areas augment existing provisions on gender-based violence, economic development, education, healthcare, the criminal legal system, housing and homelessness, civic participation, and equitable representation in decision-making. So in drafting CEDAW legislation, jurisdictions can select the focal areas that are most responsive to the communities they serve. The model ordinance also strengthens implementation by emphasizing a whole of government approach, right? As we know, gender work often gets siloed, and we want to push against that as much as we can. And it also encourages applying a pervasive intersectional lens throughout the work and ensuring that gender equity remains prioritized during emergencies, because as we know, gender rights often go out the door during emergencies or what are being called emergencies. So we are completing final revisions and engaging subject matter experts to ensure the model ordinance is both authoritative and practical for a diverse range of cities and counties. Please look for that in the coming weeks. Secondly, we do grassroots organizing. We are partnering with organizations that have CEDAW expertise and national networks in order to galvanize local coalitions and community partners to build broad-based support, thereby ensuring that implementation reflects community priorities. We also provide, it's on the slide, written guidance for each phase that I briefly described. We have a model RFP for finding an expert or university to perform a data collection and analysis consistent with CEDAW. And, most cities and counties do not have the capacity to conduct their own data collection and analysis, and we wouldn't really want them to, given the possibility of bias. So we have a model RFP setting forth the necessary parameters for this project. Next, we have, and I think this is maybe the most important tool, we have compendia of action items. We've developed research-based compendia of concrete actions for city and local governments, facilitating CEDAW implementation and gender mainstreaming. This is really the bread and butter of implementation, and it gives another menu of options, lists of evidence-based actions that individual departments within local governments can take to promote CEDAW. Next, we have a private sector initiative. If you're interested in that, please reach out. We are possibly pursuing an online impact data dashboard. As we know, there's a huge dearth of data in this area and in gender justice in general, and we're trying to find ways to address that. And lastly, we conduct international human rights advocacy. We've made submissions to the UN on local governments and human rights, and we are currently preparing a submission to the UN Special Procedures, if anyone's familiar with them, to educate and request recommendations to the US on the intersection of gender and immigration enforcement actions. Obviously, Minneapolis is a case study on this. So last slide, please. Do I have a last slide? Yeah, there it is. In closing, there's so much more to say about all this. I've tried to distill it down to the basics. We believe local CEDAW implementation has the potential to advance gender justice through structural transformation, and we invite all of you to consider how you might incorporate this strategy into your work. We also invite you to share your ideas with us for more ways to support and advance this work. Please subscribe to our website and follow our LinkedIn page for regular updates and access to our resources as they are launched. If you are not on our contact list for our regular jurisdictional convenings, please send us an email. And thank you so much. Apologies in advance that I may need to jump off in a few minutes, but I appreciate the opportunity to speak to you all, and thank you to the Cities for CEDAW History and Futures Project.
Thank you so much, Mary. Thank you for that comprehensive overview of CEDAW and Cities for CEDAW. And thank you so much for your tireless work on CEDAW. And I know we have a lot, I see in the chat, a lot of other fierce CEDAW advocates on this call as well. And we thank you for your amazing work. So Soon Young and I are co-directors of the Cities for CEDAW History and Futures Project, and we are aiming to document this historic movement for CEDAW. So I just want to point out that through our research, we've determined that CEDAW now covers over 82 million Americans, which is so amazing given that the US has not ratified CEDAW. And a couple of years ago, we were able to brief the UN CEDAW committee on this historic campaign, and the CEDAW committee noted that this kind of grassroots local implementation of the treaty is a really effective way to make the treaty real for people and could even be used in countries that have ratified CEDAW. Indeed, at last year's CSW, Nigeria, as Mary mentioned, launched the first international Cities for CEDAW campaign, where 7 states in Nigeria committed to CEDAW. And as Mary mentioned, Cardiff, Wales is the first European city for CEDAW. And we'll be traveling to Cardiff next week to meet with local stakeholders there and participate in efforts to scale up their local CEDAW motion and celebrate the 40th anniversary of the UK ratifying CEDAW. So exciting stuff going on. And I'll now turn it back over to Soon Young, who will show you some examples of this innovative local work for CEDAW.
Thanks, Jessica. Thanks, Mary, and all. Yesterday, we had the most wonderful celebration of the NGO Committee on the Cities of New York's CEDAW Global Leadership Award given to Los Angeles County. And the reason it was given is best told by this video that we wanted to show you, which is the Women and Girls Initiative, which was a 10-year program to accelerate the implementation of gender equality and to embed CEDAW into the institution within LA County. LA County covers more than 80 jurisdictions, I think almost 10 million people, so really important. And let's hear from Caroline Turin and Chanel Smith, who were so important in this.
Talk to me about the Women and Girls Initiative. What does it do for the community?
We are an initiative started by the board in 2016. We look mostly at internal policies. So at the county as an employer, a service provider, and a partner, our systems are really not designed with women or people of color in mind. And so we have to be incredibly intentional about how it is that we are spending our county dollars, how it is that we're treating the constituents that we're here to serve, as well as how we are influencing our partner agencies through our budget.
At the Supreme Court today, an historic upheaval. In a sweeping ruling that overturned a half a century of precedents, 5 justices ended the right of American women to choose abortion under the Constitution.
I think that in LA County, like Dr. Baldwin mentioned, we knew that this was, everybody, kind of knew that this was going to happen. And it's really important for us to be a beacon and to really be a safe place.
Intimate partner violence, gender-based violence is a key priority during my term as chair, and our all-women board of supervisors stands united to make sure that this remains a priority.
Sexual assault is one of the serious issues of our day, and the board recognized a need to better coordinate resources on a system-wide level and directed the Women and Girls Initiative, along with our county departmental partners and the community, to establish a framework for a sexual assault council. And this multidisciplinary council will be managed by our public health department and will work to implement system-level improvements, advance our systems of response in culturally sensitive ways, and strengthen our overall prevention services countywide.
The Women and Girls Initiative has been great. It's actually helped us to focus in on what we needed to do in the area of gender equity. What the WGI did is it gave the department impetus to put together a core working group, a committee. And we really used it to look at where we're at now and where we wanted to go and what we did for offering opportunities for girls. We wanted to offer girls-only sports leagues. That's something that we did in areas throughout the county, but we wanted to make sure we did that everywhere. Along with that, we wanted to offer girls-only special events, special clinics, to really connect them with things that girls would only do with other girls. The park programming is about equity.
The Gender Impact Assessment Program is the LA County's process for implementing the Convention on the Elimination of all forms of discrimination against women. And we do this by applying a gender lens to when the county acts as a service provider, an employer, and a partner. And today, we're proud to share that the WGI has trained all 39 county departments on how to conduct gender impact assessments and apply an intersectional gender lens to their government operations.
As a first-generation immigrant woman, I see the system and I see the downfalls in the system when it comes to women and girls. I have seen how inadequate we are in giving them services. We're a very male-oriented system. And to be able to give the tools and the ability to analyze, it speaks to me. I came into the system to change it and make it better, and I feel like now I have the tools to make it better for the women and girls who are our clients.
The GI program has helped us change how we look at our recruitment efforts. It has helped bring light to the different positions that did not have any female representation in them. And it has helped us to understand that we need to look at different sources of recruitment other than what we were doing before. I think what I would like to say is that inclusion matters and representation matters. So if you don't have folks that are representing the department that those candidates can relate to, you're not going to have people applying. And I can relate that to myself. When I first applied to this department, I looked at the management and I didn't see myself reflected within that group of management. So it is important that we do have that representation so that folks are able to feel like they will belong and they will be a part of the team.
The WGI has also partnered with several community-based organizations to advance gender equity in CEDAW's priority areas, such as women's health, economic mobility, and hiring and recruiting women to traditionally male-dominated fields.
There's a lot of women and single-headed households here in LA County, so we know that when we invest in women, we pay it forward not only directly in their own families, but also in the communities they live in, and really see the services and the opportunities people can offer that help lift themselves up out of poverty.
Thank you to the Women and Girls Initiative.
We definitely want to give a thank you to WGI.
Thank you, WGI. I really appreciate this opportunity.
Los Angeles County's historic multi-million-dollar investment in the Women and Girls Initiative ensures that the progress we've made over the past 8 years will live on. The initial seed, planted by the Board of Supervisors and nurtured by the Women and Girls Initiative, has blossomed into a permanent fixture of our county government operations, protecting women and girls for generations to come. Thank you to the Board of Supervisors for this historic investment. Thank you to our GIA teams, county departments, community partners, and past and present WGI team members for your hard work and dedication in advancing gender equity throughout Los Angeles County and beyond.
Wow, applause for that, right? So exciting, so exciting. On the ground. And we have another message from someone who would have liked to have been with us, Supervisor Horvath, who you did see in the photograph before, was able to come to New York to accept that wonderful award, the CEDAW Global Leadership Award for the county, emphasizing that it is not the county government that she was accepting on behalf, but of the women's movement behind that, inside, but also outside government, and also the history that led to that. So here's the message from Supervisor Lindsay Horvath for yours.
When rights and protections are under threat, local government has a responsibility to lead. Before I came to the county, I led the city of West Hollywood to adopt CEDAW locally when our federal government wouldn't take action. Today, in Los Angeles County, we are protecting our diverse communities and living our values of equity, safety, and care. That means ensuring women and girls, LGBTQ residents, immigrant communities, and families across our county know that their local government is here for them in action. I am deeply honored to accept the 2026 CEDAW Global Leadership Award on behalf of Los Angeles County. Thank you to NGO, CSW New York, and advocates around the world who continue to move this work forward. In LA County, gender equity is fundamental to how we govern. In 2022, we launched our county-wide Gender Impact Assessment Program, directing all 39 departments and agencies to examine their services, policies, and workforce practices through a gender equity lens and to set clear equity goals. That work is already shaping how we serve our communities, from justice reform to public health to the services families rely on each and every day. It also guides targeted efforts where protections matter most. Through our Abortion Safe Haven project, we are protecting and expanding access to reproductive health care and connecting people to accurate information and timely support. We are expanding prevention of gender-based violence, investing in doula care to improve maternal health outcomes, and strengthening family-friendly workplace policies. This is what implementing CEDAW looks like in practice: clear goals, data-informed decisions, and accountability. It is governance grounded in fairness and results. In Los Angeles County, we believe leadership begins with listening and is demonstrated through action. And we encourage fellow leaders to join us so every community is a place where women and girls have every opportunity to thrive.
Thank you, Lindsay.
When rights and
So we know that this campaign did not suddenly appear in front of us at CSW 70. And our next speaker, Krishanti Dharmaraj, is the person that I refer to as the architect of this campaign. In 1998, she worked with a coalition who had just come back from the Beijing Women's Conference and decided that they needed to do something at home. But I'm going to let Krishanti tell the story. We would be really interested in Krishanti's, if you could tell us a little bit about how this all started way back then and how you see it going forward. And tell us a little bit more also about your concern about safety, safe cities, and the work that you're doing there. Can we stop screen sharing so we can see Krishanti there?
Hello, everyone. Thank you to Sun Young and the Cities for CEDAW team for having me here. I want to first recognize that we stand on the shoulders of Indigenous, immigrant, and Black women when we think about human rights in the United States, right? It is very important at this given time to recognize that, right? CEDAW in San Francisco really, I have to say that it was 30 years ago we imagined that human rights could be relevant and used in the United States. And it was 28 years ago that CEDAW was passed in San Francisco. So it's a momentous occasion actually to speak to this group right now, because it was in April of 1996 we began this process. Right? San Francisco had the opportunity with a very strong group of supervisors, board of supervisors, to pass CEDAW overnight. However, we were intentional about it because of two California propositions that were impacting predominantly women of color. Okay, Proposition 187, which was anti-immigration proposition, and Proposition 209. Right? It was an anti-affirmative action proposition that was called an affirmative action proposition. Right? This did not allow us to actually collect data, look at fairness, right? And because the disaggregated data gathering was under threat at that time, right? And the national government, we realized, while it was promoting human rights, it was the Clinton administration that had a gap in actually ratifying CEDAW at that given time, right? So this was the beginning of CEDAW in the United States. And I think it's a very important distinction to make, that while the environment was ready for human rights in the United States, it is CEDAW that grounded human rights with the leadership of predominantly women of color that were immigrant, Black, and Indigenous, right? And if you look at the coalition of San Francisco, you would know that. And I think it's also important to recognize that there are three components. Mary talked about, the framework of it. And thank you, Mary. You spoke a lot about what we had already done 30 years ago in how we kind of went through the process and implemented it. So there are three components to any time you're thinking about passing a human rights ordinance or CEDAW in particular. One is the vision and process, right? What are we imagining our city to be? And what are the principles that we will carry when we are trying to move through this process? The second is technical skills, and I'm not going to touch on that, because I think you all have it, and there's plenty of information, and Sun Young and I did a workbook on it, and it's all there. And the third is around implementation, and I'll touch a little bit on that. Jessica, can you give me a time check, please?
Yes, you're good.
Okay, all right. So when we're thinking about the vision and the process, we have to first recognize that CEDAW is an international human rights instrument, right? In that context, you have to recognize what is the definition of human rights. It's about constructing conditions in society for people to be fully human. That means that peoples whose humanity is threatened must decide what it means to be fully human. That is autonomy, that is feminism, right? That is the right to self-determination, right? So it was necessary that women in San Francisco really came together when we did our first training on CEDAW to really look at the relevance from every single article to what was happening in San Francisco, what was working, what was not working, right? And when you think about the process, it is also really important that the process reflect the outcomes we are seeking, because that is a downfall in many of the actions. And if you really look at every CEDAW space where some have pushed forward beautifully and some have fallen short, that is the link, right? The process must match the outcome. And for us, it was an intersectional approach. It was, although intersectionality was not really internationally recognized as a term, because it was only recognized in 2001 formally in the international space, right? It was about the lived experiences of women. That is intersectionality. So our team that we pulled together really reflected that, right? And in this process, we had 3 questions that we asked. We had a task force, and we asked, do we know what we don't know? Okay. And who can help us about what we don't know? We didn't know how the city operated. So we had to figure out what we didn't know and who can help us to really understand how to shape public policy, not only the document, but how do you shift hearts and minds together, right? So the very basic sense of that is having a public hearing, right? Where people can testify as to how CEDAW is relevant to their life and world, right? And the second piece of it was also about who was going to make decisions on behalf of CEDAW, as well as who would the Board of Supervisors listen to, right? That could be different. Who you are listening to as the collective pushing forward CEDAW, right, may not be the same voices that the Board of Supervisors will listen to. And you need to have enough trust among the group that is coming together to make a strategic decision as to who you're going to position so that the Board of Supervisors or your council members would hear you, right? And the third piece that we talked about in the questions around what didn't we know, the second question was, will it bring about long-term change? Will the decisions we are making and what we are asking for bring about not short-term? Will it last beyond one election cycle? I think it's very important to know that. Okay, that's the difference between a declaration and an ordinance, right? The ordinance will carry you way beyond that election cycle, right? And the third question we asked is that, will it improve the quality of the life of women and girls in our city? All women and girls, not some. Not only the ones we know and we have brunch, lunch, and dinner with, but those we don't know, right? So that is, I would say, the process that has to match the outcome that you're seeking. And we all have the vision of CEDAW. It's about equality and non-discrimination, right? It is really about the relevance to the women at a local level. And the third piece really is around implementation, right? And when we think about implementation, you have to think about, you can call it whatever you're calling it, but there are 3 components to implementations once you're past it, right? And because these are necessary once you pass it, in your process, you have to make sure you're building the ground for these 3 areas. One is a oversight body, oversight committee. That means your task force should have some of those people who are going to sit on that city body, right? The oversight committee. And we called it a task force. The second is you need investment. It doesn't matter how good the city is. If they can't put money for women, that is of no use. And I think we can learn from both San Francisco and Los Angeles the investment that they're talking about. If the city is serious about gender equality, then we need to see investment. It is not good enough to get women to work free of charge. That is not acceptable, right? That without investment, that it is all words and no implementation, right? And the third is really about, you need to have the machinery to operationalize it, right? That means that you need to have some city department who's willing to take it on and move it through. And both with San Francisco and Los Angeles and many others, you have seen an implementation body. I would say it's the machinery that will operationalize CEDAW. And with San Francisco, we looked at 3 areas, and actually LA spoke to some of it. It was about sexual and reproductive rights. We looked at gender-based violence, and we looked at economic justice. If I have to do it again, I would change this, right? I would change economic justice to be labor, women's labor that is paid and unpaid, formal and informal, because economic justice falls within that. Right? So I think it's important to think in those terms, right? Looking at reproductive rights and sexual and reproductive rights is incredibly important, and that has to, particularly for the US, we have to continue that struggle, right? And gender-based violence, and Sun Yoon wanted me to talk to this, I think gender-based violence in itself does not make the world safe for us. And I know that some of you are going to feel very uncomfortable when I say this, right? And I'm happy to answer questions later on if Jessica puts my email address on the chat. Gender-based violence programming has responded to violence, but it has not made the world safe intentionally for women and girls. So I think it is important when we are doing CEDAW work to recognize that difference, right? And I'm going to close on that. And Sun Yoon also had mentioned about feminism and feminist leadership. If we are talking about feminist leadership, that means we may not be practicing it, really, right? Feminist leadership is not performance, it's a practice. And I have been very fortunate in the CEDAW work I've done to watch Sun Yoon, Dr. Cosette Thompson, who was one of the people who worked with me in San Francisco, late Puanani Burgess, an indigenous woman from Hawaii, and late Bell Hooks, and my mother, right? And leadership of feminism is a practice. And you see it when women put themselves fully to engage in that leadership. And I think we have been very fortunate to recognize it and be part of it and to live because of it. And I think my last comment is about an Aboriginal indigenous saying that at each stage of learning, we must give up something, even if it's a way of life we have always known, right? This is the moment, particularly in the United States, for us to assess, recognize, resist, and move on using women's human rights. Thank you very much.
Krishanti, that is for history. That's a message we can take with us to Nigeria, to Europe, to Cardiff. Thank you so much for that. Jessica, we await your instruction on how we're going to do the breakout groups. I know you want to introduce some of the facilitators, give Rachel a little time to put us into different rooms. Take over.
Great, and thank you again so much, Krishanti. So yes, we would like to break out into some smaller groups and discuss how we might use CEDAW in our local communities. So here's some questions we thought we could discuss in the group. So starting specific, so think of one local issue you care about, and we put some examples here: housing safety, climate, trafficking, like something that's important to you. And from what you've learned about CEDAW, either on this call or what you already know about CEDAW, how do you think that could help you solve that problem? And then from there, what is one small step? Like, one doesn't have to be solving the world's issues, but one small step you can do in your community, either as an individual or with your organization, realistically in the next 3 months. So each breakout room will have 2 facilitators. And the facilitators are myself, Sun Young, and Krishanti, who you've heard from so far. And then we also have on the call, and maybe I know we have the screen sharing, but maybe you could give a wave. We have Mutia Fadila Karanisa from the NGO CSW New York. We have Jessica Lee from the United Nations Association. Jill Follows from the International Alliance of Women, and Jillian D'Souza Nazareth from the Committee on Social Development. And given the time, we'll break out for about 20 minutes. And Rachel will let us know when we have 5 minutes left. And we'll list each group, just remember to assign someone from your group who will be the person who will share out when we come back to the main group. So we'd love to have a sharing out of one concrete idea that came up in your group discussion. So you can decide amongst yourselves in your group who will share that one concrete idea and what that idea is. Rachel, I think we're good to go, but just double checking. All right. You should now get a message to join a breakout room.
So are we back? Rachel, could we have our are you with us?
Yeah, hi.
Hi, okay. We are at our plenary harvest. I'm back again, Yoon. So from group one, can we have the volunteer who's going to report back? You can unmute yourself and just contribute and tell us who you are. Group one.
Indeed, group one is ready, and we have Haley who will be reporting back.
Okay, can you unmute yourself and we don't hear you. Hello? We'll go to group three because I know her mic is working.
Yes,
We'll come back. Introduce yourself and give us a brief idea of what your group focused on.
Yes, my name is Beth Dagan, and I am the founder of Cities for CEDAW in North Carolina and the past CEDAW in Durham City and Durham County in 2016 and 17. In our group, we had a speaker from India who expressed her concern about what the core area of concern was in that area. She talked about unpaid caregivers, and in her recommendation was, and her thoughts was investing in healthcare, informal caregiver, and by implementing policies for the women that they are unpaid caregivers to be paid. And then we had two speakers from North Carolina and from Montana that both of us were concerned about not being able to pass the ordinance, CEDAW ordinance. We were limited to pass CEDAW resolution, which is not legally binded. And then our speaker from Montana just showed interest for safety city model. And then we discussed some of the network, like Safety City Network in South America, and also Safety City Network in the United States, that we can get connected to them. And the second question was about collective action, that what we need to do. We had one speaker from Finland that even she expressed her interest that even in Nordic countries, CEDAW can play a very crucial role. And she showed her interest to introduce Cities for CEDAW project to her country and other Nordic countries as a project to improve the situation of women, even in Nordic countries. That's all we had, the conversation.
Thank you from group three. Do we have group two? If so, please just unmute yourself, introduce who you are, and you can speak now.
Yes, thank you, Dr. Yoon. So my name is Jessica Lee, and I am the researcher for the Cities for CEDAW History and Futures project. I will speak for group two. So the local issues that our attendees have talked about include missing girls, girls who have been trafficked, housing, and raising awareness of CEDAW principles, taking care of girls and aftercare, and also environmental issues, and being in a space that is predominantly attended by male and men, and the corruption. And then one of the small actions that we can take is to get a deeper understanding of CEDAW principles and how it relates to the governance at the local level. Thank you, and back to you, Dr. Yoon.
Thank you so much for that report. Do we have a chance of hearing from group 1 at this point?
Yeah, sorry about that. There was a bit of a delay when I came back in. So we did also discuss childcare and the need for that to be 24 hours. But
Hold on, Haley. Where are you from? Where are you
sorry, I'm from the UK.
There you are. Thank you.
Yeah, sorry. So one thing that was mentioned as well was around the FIFA World Cup, and how when large events happen, they attract more people, and there's an increased risk of violence and aggression towards women and girls, but also around human trafficking as well. We did also talk about other areas, but a small step in relation to that was around like the lack of public transportation that could potentially be increased, public facilities, and around awareness campaigns and rules and regulations for people to be aware of what's expected. And also someone mentioned about targeting women's organisations in support of CEDAW as well.
Thank you very much for that. In this closing, we are sharing ideas of commitments, things that we can do next. We will have an interesting video to share with you, because I'm just reading a message from Renad from Oman, who is 14 years old. And she really is excited about this campaign, interested in joining. So Rachel, do we have something about youth that we can share here?
How exactly was CEDAW Youth formed? Well, back in 2015, a small group of international studies students and mentors from Miriam College here in the Philippines was inspired by the Beijing Platform for Action, and yes, you guessed it, by CEDAW as well. And though it took months to form, just like everything in life that is worth it, it paid off tenfold because it led to the establishment of our organization, CEDAW Youth Miriam College Chapter. Fast forward to the present day, in the year 2022, it has been led by and composed of feminists who prove day in and day out that women can lead, that women are powerful, and most especially, that women can do and be anything and everything the patriarchy has tried to convince us of otherwise.
That's true. Over the years, our organization has published activities that would help its members to commit to our organization's values of volunteerism, leadership, and social responsibility through empowerment. I remember before the pandemic, we had artists that performed the Vagina Monologue, a play that discusses taboos that anyone experiences as a woman. It serves as a creative protest to talk about sexual enlightenment, empowerment, and self-discovery. Workshops that enhance physical health are also taking place, such as yoga, self-defense, and others.
Now, for those who are not too familiar with CEDAW Youth just yet, would like to introduce to you our organization and what we stand for. CEDAW Youth aims to promote the youth's understanding of the importance of the Convention on the Elimination of All Forms of Discrimination Against Women, or as we all know, CEDAW. It aims to develop the leadership of young women and increase their awareness and sense of responsibility in the campaign for women's human rights. And lastly, with the goal of enhancing the youth's sense of volunteerism, the members of our organization can meet up to help Miriam College Women and Gender Institute, or WAGI, in its activities.
CEDAW Youth was formed just because a small group of people wanted to inform others of what CEDAW is. Unfortunately, most Filipinos lack awareness regarding CEDAW, and that the current laws that protect women here in the Philippines were based on its very principles.
Until we have been informed that CEDAW movements are always happening in the parts of the world. Yet, aside from us, CEDAW Youth Miriam College chapter, there is no other CEDAW youth anywhere in the world. But just like how we started, anyone can start their own CEDAW youth. And how can you do that? Easy. Let's use the acronym CEDAW. First, C. Carry the principles of CEDAW. Uphold its principles and use these values to build your own chapter.
E. Establish and engage with other people that have the same interests as you, and then build it up from there.
D. Declare your vision and mission. What are your objectives and how will you do that? A. Act. Now that you have declared your vision and mission, it's time to put that into action.
And lastly, W. Widen your knowledge and connections. CEDAW Youth has started as a small group full of international studies students. However, as time went by, we are increasingly growing with connections from different individuals and groups in the Philippines. And now, we're here, hoping to expand our organization globally, since CEDAW Youth should never just be one organization, but a global movement.
Building another CEDAW Youth chapter is never complicated. All you just need is the knowledge, the passion for justice, and action for peace. So what are you waiting for? We are CEDAW Youth from the Miriam College chapter. What chapter will you be coming from?
So connect with us. And please don't hesitate if you want to collaborate or to inquire with us so you could build your very own CEDAW Youth group. Here are our social media pages, and we hope that we get connected. That's CEDAW Youth, and then thank you for listening.
Thanks so much for that. And I hand it back over to Jessica to close us out. Jessica, take over.
Yes, I would like to invite our co-sponsors to say a few words about how you can stay connected. First, I'll introduce Allison Brown, President of the International Alliance of Women.
International Alliance of Women is the oldest feminist organization in the world, the oldest international one. We were conceived in 1902 and founded officially in 1904 under the impression that if women only got the right to vote, that would be sufficient to have them be able to solve all the problems that women face. But as women discovered, merely voting was not quite enough. Conservative women vote too. So we changed our directions, and we changed our name to International Alliance of Women, Equal Rights, Equal Responsibilities. We are an umbrella organization since the beginning, a connection of women's organizations from all over the world. Our two official languages are English and French, which is why you find no affiliates in Latin America, which is unfortunate, but we cannot deal with Spanish as much as we would like to. And therefore, we are mostly restricted to North America, Europe, Africa, and Asia, which is not very restrictive after all. We have representatives in the UN offices all around the world and also in regional groups like the European Women's Lobby and the Council of Europe. And I will put the address of our website in the chat. Thank you.
Thank you, Allison. And now we'll hear from Jillian D'Souza Nazareth from the Committee on Social Development.
Thanks, Jessica. So the NGO Committee for Social Development supports Cities for CEDAW because local CEDAW implementation is in fact a concrete tool to advance the committee's core mandate, that of reducing poverty, tackling exclusion, and promoting people-centered development. Supporting Cities for CEDAW also bridges global norms and local practice by bringing the global local, by translating an international human rights treaty into municipal policies and budgets, thereby improving social development for almost half of the world's population. Um, the agenda directly reinforces that of the Annual Commission for Social Development, which works around SDG 1 of eradication of poverty, decent work, SDG 8, peaceful and just institutions, SDG 16. And therefore, it is a natural fit that we at the NGO Committee for Social Development support and work alongside Cities for CEDAW. So congratulations to all of you, and especially Sun Young and Jessica for bringing this forward.
Thank you so much, Jillian. And if you enjoyed this training, we are holding another one on Mondays geared towards youth activists. That'll be at 10:30 a.m. in the Church Center on the second floor. So please join us. And that is our email to stay connected with the Cities for CEDAW History and Futures Project. And I've put that email in the chat as well. And our project is building a living archive of the Cities for CEDAW movement. So if you are part of the Cities for CEDAW movement, or you are trying to be, or you're just doing amazing work everywhere, send us all of your materials so we can archive it for the history of this historic women's movement. And you can send it to the email I put in the chat. Also, for some resources, citiesforcedaw.org is a website run by Women's Intercultural Network that has the list of all CEDAW cities and some good resources, as well as Mary Hansel's organization, CEDAW Rising, and the Making Rights Real for Future Generations handbook, written by Soon Young and Krishanti, who you heard from on this call. It is a workbook on CEDAW, and you can get that on Amazon. Oh yes, and we will also share a recording of this session afterwards with everyone who registered and attended, because I saw that question in the chat. So I think that is it. We would love to take a screenshot of everyone. So if you would like to be in the picture, please turn your videos on and we'll take a picture. Say cheese.
Everyone needs to smile. Look happy. Wave if you want. I love waving pictures. Square heads waving. There we are, saying goodbye to each other or hello to each other. Thank you so much. Bye, everyone.
Bye. Thank you for coming.
Thank you, Sun Yoon. Thanks, Jessica and the team.
Yeah, thank everyone.
Thank you, Krishanti.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you.